So let's continue our discussion of cognition, starting with Piaget. Please take a moment and think of Piaget's 4 stages and then mentally place them in correct order. So you probably got sensory motor, and then it was some operational stage next. It was pre-operational. Was it concrete then formal, or formal and concrete? Hopefully you hear the word for informal, so formal would be last, and concrete would be the third, which is the one that not all adults reach, would be the last one, so it would be formal operational thinking. According to research, only 10% of subjects tested fully meet the criteria for formal operational thought, but 70% mostly reach it. Included in this formal operational thinking would be hypothetical deductive thinking, in other words, scientific reasoning, making a hypothesis and testing it, not just limited to scientists. Also propositional thought, which is an if-then sort of reasoning, and sometimes even contrary to fact reasoning. What if snow was black? What if people didn't feel prejudice and stereotype people? Let's now consider 2 other thought styles associated with the formal operational period. One is abstract thinking. In this form of thinking, the things you think about are real, but they're not physical. Democracy, guilt, the future. If you think about them, you're engaged in abstract thinking. Idealistic thinking, on the other hand, is thinking about the way things could be, maybe even should be. Also increases dramatically during the time period of adolescence. In Module 8A, we consider the adolescent brain, the idea that the limbic system, the emotion system, is fully functional, and yet the cerebral cortex, whose job is in part to moderate it, is far from up to the task. We know that the one result is very powerful emotions. Researcher and theorist David Elkind specialized in adolescent thinking, and let's consider a few of his concepts and see if you can relate to them in the past or maybe even the current present. First, adolescent egocentrism. Many adolescents feel that everybody is talking about them, focusing on them, concentrating on them, with the same degree that they focus on themselves. This has been the case for many generations, and a certain degree of it, a large degree of it, is adolescent egocentrism. That being said, with social media, there might be a more than grain of truth to this than in the past. So there is a lot of commenting on people, blogging on people, and so on. So partially fictional, but maybe also part of today's world. Now, the personal fable says that you are unique, you are special, and that no one can possibly understand you. And adolescents often accuse their parents of not being able to understand. Well, it's interesting that the parent has been at their particular age, so the parent probably is able to understand them to a much greater degree than they realize. Now, sure, the chronosystems have definitely changed, and maybe the exosystems to a certain extent too, but still that idea that you are unique and special and nobody can possibly understand you, maybe at least somewhat of an overstatement. The last one, adolescent invulnerability. The idea that you can get away with anything you want, physically, legally, what have you, and nothing bad will come of it. So adolescents engage in risky behaviors that hopefully they'll get through uninjured, unharmed, unarrested, but that's not often the case. Consider examples of behaviors that you might have, or your friends might have, or maybe still are engaging in, that might reflect this adolescent invulnerability. And then you can go to the next slide and see how many of the same things we thought of in common. if this was a live class instead of an online class, I'd love to hear what sort of things that you thought of, and conversely, how many things on the slide that you thought of. So on the right, unplanned pregnancy for either the male gender identified or female gender identified person. Bottom right, just extreme risky behaviors. Teenage driving, new skills, not developed skills, but maybe driving too fast or for the conditions. Drug overdoses, fentanyl, even the first time use or one use can easily be fatal. Smoking cigarettes with the idea that you won't become addicted, or vaping with the idea that you won't become addicted. Vaping actually has much higher nicotine levels and is more addictive, not less. Let's consider school and the adolescent in terms of chronic absenteeism. 25% of American teens are chronically absent from school. That's actually a technical term used by the government. How chronic is chronic? The student misses 1 day out of every 10 or more. There are many risks associated with being chronically absent, failing course or having to repeat a grade, dropping out or not just being able to meet the criteria to graduate. Juvenile delinquency, PINS is a court term for persons in need of supervision. Students just running around loose sometimes get into trouble. They're less likely to go to college, and that means a lower lifetime earning for that individual. What are some of the reasons why they're not attending to school regularly? It might be simple transportation issues. It could be a chronic illness. We know that asthma is the most common chronic illness. Mental health conditions such as anxiety or depression. Academic difficulty with or without learning disabilities. Lack of parental supervision, or maybe bullying so that they don't wish to attend school. So some of the reasons. Half college students fail out. This includes both community colleges and four-year college and universities. Let's look at a few of the common reasons. One, it will relate to our social media. Not having enough time to study, but finding ample time to use social media might be a matter of changing priorities. Many students incorrectly assume that college is like high school. It is not. Many think that knowing the syllabus is optional and therefore don't know when things are due, absence policies or participation policies, or what to do when you miss a test. Knowing the syllabus, which is indeed different for every class, is essential. Many students think assignments are optional or wait to the end and beg to be allowed to do the assignments, and most teachers will not comply. Think attendance is optional. Some classes attendance is taken, others for points, others is not part of the grading system, but still not being present for a lecture has a dramatic impact, as I assume most of you know. Asking your teacher if you missed anything important, well, from a teacher's point of view, if you miss a class, what you missed was important. Very common one, which grows as the time the semester passes, expecting extra credit to be created that will save you. And this is almost never the case. So consider these when you're considering your college success. Hopefully you've taken a moment and identified stages 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Kohlberg's theory. If you haven't, please do so. Stage 1 would be a focus on punishment, that is, avoiding it at all cost, with no other considerations. Stage 2, the focus, self-benefit. What do I get out of it? These are pre-moral stages, pre-conventional in Kohlberg's terms. Stages 3 or 4 are conventional in Kohlberg's term. 3 is the stage of good boy, nice girl. It has two aspects at least. One is one's feelings are very relevant and help us decide. The other one is that we want to be seen as a good person, as a nice person by others. That also helps us guide our decision making. Stage 4, the stage of law and duty. The person is very determined to meet their duties and obligations and to follow the letter of the law. That is the guide that they use for decision making. Stage 5, social contract, refers to a person whose focus is both on the person and the society as a whole. It's a balance, and decisions reflect that balance. Stage 6, a very rare stage, very few people get to it, of universal ethical principles. The person thinks on ethics quite a bit and designs their own principles, which they apply universally. Take a moment and decide what you think universally might mean in this situation. So universal. That would be across people and situations. Kohlberg considered stage 1 and 2 pre-moral. He termed it pre-conventional. Stages 3 and 4, beginning of morality, he labeled it conventional thinking. And stages 5 and 6, he labeled post-conventional. Very few of us get to the post-conventional stage, only about 20 or 25% of people. Since time allows, let's consider the Heinz dilemma, the mechanism through which Kohlberg explored morality. He created a dilemma. In this dilemma, Heinz was a man whose wife had cancer. Only one drug could save her. It was made locally, but the druggist wants a fortune for the drug, and Heinz cannot come up with the money. And Heinz only has two options. He steals the drug, and his wife has a very good shot at living, or he does not steal the drug, and his wife dies. Kohlberg would ask his subjects, what should Heinz do, and why do you say it? And based on the why, their stage of morality would be classified. No matter what the particular dilemma, if Kohlberg had a big enough sample, he found that the answers could reliably be put into 6 piles. That formed his 6 stages. He then ordered the 6 stages. Stage 1 thinker, the only focus is avoiding punishment. So in the Kohlberg-Heinz dilemma, what would be a reason to or not to steal the drug? Again, it's supposed to be punishment focused. The common answer would be no, he shouldn't do it. He could get arrested. You might say, he loves his wife. Well, again, he's got to focus on punishment. So a person might say, yes, do it, just steal it well, don't get caught. Or if they got caught, what is the likelihood they really would get punished for stealing a drug in this circumstance? Probably low. The jury would probably have great sympathy. But again, the reason is punishment focus. Stage 2 would be self-benefit, which is a fun stage to talk about. List some reasons why he should or should not steal the drug. Self-benefit. You might say, well, he loves his wife. Well, again, love doesn't have anything to do with it. To keep his wife alive, okay, but give me the benefits of having his wife. What does she do for him? She might cook, she might clean. Maybe she's the shoveler of snow in the winter, the mower of grass in the summer. So it's to his benefit to keep this woman alive. What would be a benefit of not stealing the drug? Basically, of letting her die. Maybe she's getting older, showing wear and tear. Maybe she's getting a little snarly from all the things she has to do to keep Heinz happy. So maybe it'd be much cheaper than a divorce. So whatever your stage 2 reason was, it has to focus on self-benefit. Some students say, oh, maybe she's well insured and Heinz would benefit from that. Stage 3, feelings. He loves his wife. Well, or maybe he doesn't. Or he wants to be perceived as a good husband, so he should steal it. Or what would people think if he was arrested? So again, focus on what would people think. Stage 4, the law and duty stage. Meeting your duties and obligations. So maybe your duty to keep your wife healthy and happy, maybe not breaking the law. Let's now consider stage 5, the stage of social contract. So the person must think of the needs of the individual and society and decide which will be given more weight. So perhaps a person will say, well, she was a good woman, society would clearly benefit from her presence, and Heinz would clearly benefit also, and clearly the woman herself would benefit. So for the good of all, steal the drug. Someone else might argue that if we broke laws when we felt justified, even though this would be sad to lose this woman, For the good of society, we must respect the laws for the good of all. Stage 6, typical sample had no stage 6 people at all. Stage 6 is very rare. So the person might, if willing to steal the drug to save his or her wife, should also be willing to save a person that they don't care for. Maybe you don't care for perhaps your mother-in-law. In Intropsych, I gave the example of, let's say, a next-door neighbor who is a terrible person. Dogs and cats are disappearing. He has been seen to try to run them down with his car. He is suing most of the block. He is fracking and contaminating the well supply. He misuses them as employees and make them as heinous as you possibly can. Would you want to save this particular neighbor? If you would say, an example, maybe give your kidney to save your child, if a person's universal ethical principle, they might give that same kidney to save a neighbor who is utterly and thoroughly despised. So the ethics are applied universally. We can understand it, but how many people would really give their kidney to a man they despised? Let's now consider identity, starting with the perspective of Erik Erikson. His time associated with adolescence is identity versus role confusion. This is a time to explore identity. It would include all sorts of aspects of identity, from self, religion, sexuality, career. It's also a time of growing independence from parents, doing things on your own, getting around on your own, making life decisions on your own. Although we view the clip attached, please view it again and this time take notes on it, with the idea that you just might see a test question asking about a particular culture's way of celebrating the coming of age. Most people have heard of the bar mitzvah, coming of age ceremony for the Jewish boy, but fewer people, for some strange reason, have not heard of the bat mitzvah, the similar ceremony for the girl. Since girls mature earlier, this ceremony actually occurs at age 12 as compared to the boys' ceremony at age 13. And as you can see, both are often accompanied by a substantially rockin' party. Let's consider an extension of Erikson's work by James Marcia. Marcia identifies 4 different identity statuses, as you can see. First one, diffusion. The individual has not yet begun to explore the identity dimension. This is often early in the process, but it can also continue. Let's next consider foreclosure. This person has accepted the identity they were given to them. Perhaps they accept the family religion without ever really considering it. Maybe they consider the family trade is their career and don't even consider that there might be a choice in it. Maybe they consider that having children will just happen and they really don't decide whether or not they can choose. It's just a given in their life. So many people do go directly into foreclosure status. Next, let's consider moratorium. This person is actively exploring. Do I want to go to college or not? Do I want my parents' family business or not, perhaps? So actively exploring their choices. Lastly, let's consider achievement. The person has gone through the active exploration, that is, they have gone through moratorium, and now they have committed. This does not mean that they can't change along the way, but they have a very distinct goal plan, if you will. Where are you in this? Now, if you're curious about the 2 pictures on the bottom, they're the same group. Left is showing a bunch of Amish teens hanging out, as teens often do. And the right, another group of Amish teens, and they kind of might not match your picture of what Amish are. We have Amish in our area. They're often seen in horse and buggies. They are allowed to accept rides from the English, as they call us, or pay for rides for certain things they might need, like a medical appointment in a city. You might think that an Amish youth would go directly into foreclosure, but most Amish groups in the country have a tradition called Rumspringa. It's like the word rum and then spring, in which they're allowed to try all sorts of things that would be forbidden for a traditional Amish person. So riding in cars, smoking, going to malls, dressing non-traditionally, you name it. Most things are allowed to be experienced. At the end of Rumspringa, they must either decide to not be Amish, or if they decide to be Amish, they will be baptized as an adult. And at that point, they must keep Amish values. If they break away or break the values at that point, they can be shunned, which means that they will not be talked to or included or interacted with by any Amish person. So it's very severe. So they don't have to accept the Amish lifestyle. Actually, many don't. Most do, though. But again, it's the choice of must be made, and once baptism is made, that's a vow that's tremendously serious and cannot be taken back or violated. So if you thought that they went into foreclosure, no, not at all. I should share that the word Rumspringa is German. Pennsylvania Dutch is really from the term Deutsch. Deutsch is how Germans refer to themselves because they were German people, not Dutch people. But in German, Rumspringa means literally to run around or to run about, which kind of captures the some of the essence of it. Let's take a moment to consider ethnic identity. Some of us might have a very strong ethnic component to our identity. Some of us may be the children of first-generation Americans. We might even be first-generation ourselves. For these individuals, there must be a balance between two cultures, mainstream culture and one's individual culture. And many times, parents are a stronger aspect of one's ethnic culture. As we will see shortly in this chapter, adolescence is a time in which identity is focused on and considered. Let's consider religion in terms of the adolescent. About half of teens consider themselves to be religious, and slightly more than half consider themselves to be spiritual. Can you be both? Absolutely. About a third consider themselves to be both. Does this match the parents? Well, if we were to focus on the non-evangelical Christians, which are much more likely to match, Christians in general, about half match their parents' religiosity or spirituality. I'm sorry, I don't have comparable statistics for Judaism and Islamic culture and other religions. It is common in homes with adolescents to see an increase in parent-child tension and conflict. But this is usually mild and usually does pass. Consider your own experience and that of your siblings. And if you're a parent, well, you have a different perspective to reflect on. It may or may not surprise you that there's more conflict with parents with their male child than with their female child. Fairly consistent research. Both sex children, girls and boys, have more conflicts with their mother than with their father. That one probably was not a surprise. Let's consider friendship in adolescence. We'll find similarity will be increasing. There are gender differences. Females do tend to have fewer but closer friends, and talking is often the major activity. Males will have a wider peer group, circle of friends, and often shared physical activities are the binding activity. In terms of cross-racial friendships, we noted before, sadly, they tend to decrease significantly as the student/child ages. Let's next consider social media use. Higher levels have been correlated in many studies with higher levels of depression and anxiety. When polled, roughly half of people and even roughly half of adolescents and young adults agree that they spend too much time on it. Research indicates that older teens are spending about 7.5 to 10 hours a day on various digital social technologies. In comparison, less than 2 hours a day on studying. In the past, teachers would see students mostly studying before class or chatting. Now, very few students are seeing this chat or study. The bulk are checking in on their social media. Indeed, even in classes where attendance and participation are counted, it is not unusual to find a student who cannot go 50 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes without checking their social media. Let's focus on LGBT youth. Even in today's age, many have difficulty accepting orientation of LGBT, not surprisingly, when they're often getting messages from the religious institution, from their families, from their schools, from their peers, that this is not acceptable. Many may choose heterosexual dating in an attempt to fit in. Every LGBT person must decide if, who, and when they will tell. Research is clear: a good parental response is the key predictor of good adjustment. But telling parents poses a huge risk. At the extreme end, some states still allow conversion therapy. The next slide will consider another very huge risk to personal well-being. I assume this percentage shocks you. It still shocks me every time I look at it. 40% of home with youth are LGBT, rejected from their families. Sadly, BIPOC children and teens are even more likely to be rejected and end up being homeless. I'm assuming you know the acronym BIPOC and, for that matter, DEI. If you don't, consider those letters for a moment, BIPOC and DEI, and hopefully you know both. If not, this is a good opportunity to learn them. BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color, and DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Many jobs, including any job at this college, would require applicants to submit a statement regarding DEI. So growing increasingly recognized, and this, in my opinion, is an extremely good thing. I should add that in the academic environments I've been in, BIPOC always stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color, but it can also be used by other people to mean Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. So either one is correct. Let's consider cliques and crowds. A clique is a smaller group, 5 to 7 or maybe 4 to 7 individuals, very close. Members tend to be similar. These are more important to girls. Crowds are bigger and are composed of various cliques. Crowds often reflect abilities such as or interests, the theater group, the music group, what have you. Sometimes they express ethnicity. The goals of dating will change across adolescence. Early on, it's pure status, prestige. Later on, it's intimacy and social support. LGBT dating is more complicated. First of all, one has to identify one's partners, especially hard if one's not out oneself. Also, more issues with parents, teachers, peers, and even siblings. Another issue of increasing significance is violence. Dating violence is a growing problem. As you can see, 1 in 3 students in high school will experience some sort of violence in the dating realm. Is there such a thing as cell phone addiction? Is it a real disorder? Do we know a biological impact of cell phone and social media on the brain? Well, we do know that it activates the pleasure center, similar to many behaviors such as drug use, gambling, and so on. It is not recognized in the DSM as a disorder, though I strongly suspect in the next DSM it will be in there. Does it fit the DSM criteria, let's say, for addictive disorders? Well, let's go to the next slide and see. When reviewing the slide, I noticed I didn't mention the neurotransmitter. It would be the one for pleasure. Do you have an idea? Is it dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin? It would indeed be dopamine. If you're not getting the sleep that you should have, this slide lists steps that either parents or you can actually take. First, limit or ban electronics from the bedroom. Next, keep a regular schedule, even on weekends or breaks. Many people think that they can recap sleep deprivation from sleeping long over a weekend over a break. Research indicates this is not at all the case. Keep a regular bedtime routine and limit caffeine. Caffeine that you took at noon is still in your system by the time you're going to bed in small quantities. But if you're drinking at 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock, it is pronounced in your bloodstream at that point to bed. Let's now consider teen substance use and abuse. The most common age of becoming addicted to any drug is the teen years. Many teens do become obviously addicted, and some overdose and die. Try to ignore my rescue dogs, if you will. What drug is associated with the most fatal overdoses? Crack? Heroin? If you're saying fentanyl, you are correct. Fentanyl is much stronger than heroin. It's 50 times stronger than heroin, and fentanyl is 100 times stronger than morphine. So obviously very easy to overdose even on the first use. Unfortunately, many illicit street drugs have fentanyl. I don't understand the logic of killing your customers, but apparently within sociopathic drug cartels, this is business as usual. Let's focus on nicotine addiction, though, because that's obviously much more common. Nicotine addiction typically begins in teens, and nicotine is considered to be the leading cause of preventable death in the U.S. So if you could magically snap your finger and make one drug go away, probably choose nicotine because that'll keep the most people alive, the most families intact. Many teens vape and believe that vaping is safe. Above 3/4 of teens believe vaping is a safe behavior. If you want the exact number, it was 82% in the study I read, but most. There are no reputable studies that show it's safe. It is not. Teens typically believe it is less addicting. It is actually far more addicting than regular cigarettes. It's often used for smoking cessation, but the typical outcome is that the person continues to smoke cigarettes and also vapes as well. There's also a big risk in the house. There's the other rescue dogs. If there's also young children in the house, there is a huge risk of overdose. And some young children do die of overdoses. I wanted to add that it's very unlikely that a child would overdose on nicotine cigarettes. They're not tasty. They're not going to probably be smoking them. But young children are overdosing at alarming rates with vaping products. So again, bear that in mind. Let's now consider body image and self-esteem. Not perhaps surprisingly, body image strongly predicts self-esteem. When female gender persons look at their body, they often see too much body fat and breast size being too small for their liking. Males, when they look at themselves, often see too little muscle mass. Interestingly, if you look at from the perspective of the other gender, and I know this implies that there's only two genders, which is not correct, but when males look at females, they are not nearly as critical. Particularly in breast size, the average woman wants bigger breasts than the average man would prefer. which is hardly an important measure to begin with, but interesting that she's being very hard on herself for no reason other than for female preferences, not male. And if you consider uh, males, they often see too little muscle mass, but the average male wants to be more muscular than the average female gender person wants or desires. So again, perhaps not relevant, but again, being very hard on themselves also. Let's consider girls and eating disorders, specifically what factors increase risk. Entering puberty early is a decided risk for eating disorders. A home focusing on weight, especially if mom is very concerned with her weight. Family over-involvement, families that are over-controlling in their daughters' behaviors tend to have daughters that have a much higher risk of various issues, including eating disorders. Body dissatisfaction, and the type A girl or adolescent also has a much increased risk. Take a moment and see what you remember about type A personality from intro psych. It may be a few years for some of you. So what are the type A characteristics? You might say achievement oriented, absolutely. They're often time oriented. The student that's habitually late is not a type A student. Often perfectionistic, often controlling. Let's consider bulimia first. Do you know the formal name for bulimia, the two-word phrase? If you're thinking bulimia nervosa, you are correct. Bulimia always involves binging. If there is no binge, it cannot be bulimia. So it's binging followed by unhealthy methods to prevent weight gain. Think of what the methods that he or she might use. Well, after the binge, they might not eat for days or eat very minimal for days. Others use excessive exercise. Perhaps you're thinking about stimulant drugs to speed up metabolism, perhaps, or drugs that would push the food through the intestinal tract more quickly. Perhaps you are thinking about vomiting. Indeed, that is a tool that's also used. So basically, any unhealthy way to prevent the calories that would result if he or she did not do the subsequent follow-up behaviors. Let's consider the DSM criteria. Do you remember from intro psych what DSM stands for? It would be Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. So the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. Its criteria would be that the person would have to engage in these behaviors at least 2 times a week for a period of 3 months in order to meet diagnosis. So at least twice a week, and it has to be going on for at least 3 months. As we know, there's 2 types in the DSM, the purging type and the non-purging type, such as the exercisers and the people who abstain from eating afterwards. Is bulimia occurring in males? Yes, though the vast majority of people are female. Males will often be trying to get down in weight and then recap their energy. Often males engage in athletics that require weighing. Can you think of any sports that require weighing? Certainly wrestlers, boxers, apparently also very prevalent in jockeys. Now let's consider anorexia, and as you might suspect, it too can be called nervosa, so anorexia nervosa. It's a refusal to maintain normal body weight. I don't like just to say starvation because sadly in this world many people starve, but it's not anorexia. This is intentional. This is self-induced starvation. So it's a refusal to maintain normal body weight. The criteria which is often used is the 85% criteria. When he or she, through their behaviors, reduces their body weight to 85% or less, or as in the picture in the far left, a lot less of what they should weigh for their height and weight, they meet the criteria for anorexia. In females, another part of the criteria would be the absence of at least 3 menstrual cycles during the time period. There are two varieties. The restrictive type, in which the person severely restricts their calories. They often will engage in heavy exercise or laxative or diuretic or stimulant abuse. This could be true for the second variety, the binge eating and purging variety as well. Many intro psych students are confused that there's a binge eating and purging variety. This person will use these tools to get themselves down to the 85% or less. So the difference, let your eyes tell you the difference. The bulimic is of a normal weight typically, or maybe slightly heavy. The anorexic, picture somebody like the person on the left, though hopefully not as extreme as that. So they can engage in the same behaviors. It's that the goal is very different. Now, males that have eating disorders, particularly anorexia, are more likely to be LGBT, or not the L anyway, but bisexual, transgendered, or gay as compared to other males. How often do males suffer from bulimia or anorexia? Statistics tell us that about 85 to 90% of people with either of these two eating disorders are female. So about 10 to 15% are male. For our last slide in this chapter, let's consider the topic of adolescent suicide, starting with risk factors. In terms of gender, males have more fatalities. Females have more attempts, but males are more likely to be fatal. Certain family environments are a risk. Family environments that have a high degree of stress or a high degree of poverty. In terms of sexual orientation, the LGBT population does have a much higher risk factor. A personality style of the most risk would be a highly intelligent student that's also very withdrawn. Triggering events are also often seen. Most individuals do have diagnosable mental illnesses. This does surprise my intro psych students. Amongst the most common illnesses would be mood disorders like major depression or the rare bipolar disorder, anxiety disorders, conditions such as schizophrenia, certain personality disorders such as borderline personality disorder, or substance abuse issues. My intro psych students are also surprised. They assume that adolescents and young adults are at the highest risk. No, the highest risk group is the 50-plus crowd, much higher risk. For the last bullet, if you are thinking about suicide, let's start that virtually everybody that's ever lived has thought about suicide. A passing thought that passes their mind and is quickly dismissed and they move on. That is typical for almost everyone. But if it comes to your mind and you think on it and you stay with it, or if it's off in your mind, that's different and that should be addressed. If it's something you think about but you're not actively contemplating, do get help. Perhaps start with our in-house counseling service. Make an appointment, say that you are thinking about suicide. They'll get you in that day. You can also make appointments. Ellis Hospital has a very good psychiatric center, outpatient and inpatient, but outpatient is probably what you're thinking about. If it's imminent, a crisis, there are crisis lines such as the new 988. If it's an active crisis, it's appropriate to call 911 because it is obviously emergency. For most people that are suicidal, it's a passing thing, and if they get to that moment, that rough spot in their life, they'll never return to it. So if it's a friend, it's really important that you get them, do everything that you can do, because what if you don't and they do harm themselves? So no one can stop another person's plans, but you can do what you can do, and you've got to do everything that you can do to bring them to help. And like I've said, if it's few, you also have to value yourself, and you are worth it, and things can get better, and they will give you the tools to get through whatever life experiences are troubling you. So please do reach out. And you could also have teachers guide you in the process, or family members, but do something because you are valuable.